The most chaotic and perhaps most entertaining league in Europe, Serie A is on a tear right now. Every European final in 2023 featured an Italian team, while 2 of them made the UCL semis, and domestically, Serie A saw its 4th different champion in 4 years, with Napoli lifting the Scudetto after a wait of over 3 decades. But while there was joy in Campania, the story was very different in Lombardy. Silvio Pioli, whose position should have been unassailable after a surprise title in 2022, spent much of the year fighting to keep his job, while contract talks with star player Rafael Leao rumbled on all season, contributing to a 16-point slide from the previous campaign and a 4th place finish backed up by all the underlying numbers. So what has happened to Milan? What led to their decline? What measures have they taken to arrest it? And what can they do to prevent the fall continuing? On today's FD Explained, we're looking into it. 5 years ago, a Champions League semi and top 4 finish would have seemed mightily attractive to the Rossoneri, but in context, it's not quite as impressive. Yes, they reached the Final Four of the European Cup for the first time since they won the trophy in 2007, but they only faced one good side along the way, Napoli, having squeezed past Dinamo Zagreb, Red Bull Salzburg, and out-of-sorts Chelsea and Tottenham teams before that. And in the end they exited meekly, 3-0 at the hands of rivals Inter, and domestically too, success came with a hint of failure, the Lombardy side only scraping into the top 4 thanks to Juve's points deduction. Of course there were mitigating circumstances. Mike Maignan only played 22 of 38 league games due to injury, Theo Hernandez suffered an enormous drop-off, going from 1.6 dribbles per game to 0.6 and creating fewer chances, and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who chipped in with 10 goal involvements in 21-22, could only appear 4 times and score once in 22-23. But there was a team-wide decline in quality which can't be put down to one player. In attack, despite Ibra's absence and the failure of signings like Divock Origi and Charles de Ketelaere, and shots dropping from 15.7 a game to 14.4, XG was almost identical to the Scudetto campaign, at just under 1.6 per 90, third behind Napoli and Inter. Finishing was roughly the same too, turning those chances into 64 goals instead of last year's 69, but in defence, the drop-off was devastating. It started from the front. The press, though still one of the best in Italy, dropped from disrupting opposition possession every 8.9 passes to every 9.3. And where in 21-22 nobody in Serie A had won the ball back in the final third more than Milan, who did it 9.7 times per game, this season that fell all the way to 7.8 times a game, only good for 6th in the league. Without the press penning opponents back, they were able to break through and create clear-cut chances more easily, which is why, despite conceding the same number of shots per match, just over 10, Milan went from allowing 0.95 xG each game to 1.08. In concrete terms, it meant that when the season ended, they'd let in 43 league goals, up from just 31 the season before. 4 teams had better xG against, and 6 teams allowed fewer actual goals. You probably won't win the title playing like that. Juventus in 2020 are the only team in the 38-game era to have done so. But if Pioli was struggling to extract the same quality on the pitch from the players, he wasn't getting much help behind the scenes. Milan's rebuild has been founded, mostly, on finding edges. Understanding they couldn't compete financially with Juventus, the Rossoneri spent the years immediately before their title slowly filling out their squad with mostly young, mostly undervalued players. Theo Hernandez and Brahim Diaz were airlifted off the Real Madrid bench. Ismael Benacer and Sandro Tonali both arrived from relegated teams. Kalulu and Tomori were hot prospects whose parent teams had forgotten about them, and on top of this were potential stars like Mike Maignan and Rafael Leao, clearly excellent but not established enough for a genuine super club to pay the money yet. The team wasn't wedded to the youth strategy, also seeing the worth in experienced acquisitions like Rade Krunic, Simon Kjaer and Olivier Giroud, but their system was always based on gambling. A guy you think is undervalued may simply not be very good, and in 2022 they made the wrong bets at the wrong time. Malik Thiaw was one for the future, but represented a significant drop-off from the first-tier defenders, putting up the worst tackle success rate, block and foul numbers among Pioli's centre-halves. Alessandro Florenzi, made permanent after a loan the year before, could only contribute 2 starts. Divock Origi grabbed just 3 goals and assists, with his measly 0.29 xG per 90 placing in the bottom 21% of forwards. And worst of all was Charles de Ketelaere, who, at 35 million euros, cost 65% of Milan's total summer outlay, but utterly failed to convince Pioli assisting a single goal in 1100 minutes. That meant the same players got run into the ground again, and with the World Cup adding to fatigue levels in the middle of the campaign, Milan were simply running on fumes after the new year. And worse, the De Ketelaere signing was pushed by Paolo Maldini at the expense of securing the services of Paulo Dybala, a move which chipped away at the trust between board, directors and coaching staff, making it an easy decision to part ways with Maldini and fellow sporting director Ricky Massara when the season came to an end. So where does that leave Milan? One good thing about the new Milan is that losing Maldini and Massara will not change things entirely. With most of the recruitment team staying in place, the statistical scouting will continue, and the database will need to be well stocked this summer, as the Rossoneri have plenty to do. Though, as we've noted, the attack didn't drop much from 21-22, it's still an easy area to upgrade. Other than Leao, Giroud and Brahim Diaz were the only players to hit 10 goal involvements in Serie A, and Giroud is 36, while Diaz is finally returning to Real Madrid unless a deal can be brokered to bring him back. With De Ketelaere and Origi impossible to rely on, the club needs at least one more attacker, but ideally a centre-forward who can grow into the spearhead of the side, as well as another quality winger who can take some of the pressure off Leao. Arsenal's Folarin Balogun is reportedly an option through the middle, while Christian Pulisic could make the jump from Chelsea to fill the gap on the flank. They'd be a perfect start, with Balogun in particular getting more shots and XG per 90 than anyone at San Siro currently. Midfield unfortunately needs work too after the sale of Sandro Tonali to Newcastle. Though stats have never loved him as much as the Italian press do, the player is 23, a Milan fan from childhood, and was the third most used player at the club last term, racking up over 2,700 minutes domestically. The record €70 million fee, more than the €67 million they got for Kaká, unadjusted for inflation, will go some way to sugaring the pill, but Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Yunus Musa, the preferred replacements, are by no means slam dunks, the former boasting a track record but poor fitness, the latter claiming potential but little output so far. They might be better off aiming for a true holding midfielder, given that 3 of the top 4 players in the squad for defensive actions per game last year were defenders, suggesting that opponents were not meeting adequate resistance in the centre of the park. Spooling up the press again and adding some legs might help. Unfortunately, Pioli's presence on the sideline will add some essential stability in 23-24. With the income from the Champions League run this year and their guaranteed place next, putting €90 million in the coffers and wiping out Milan's debt, the club is not in a desperate position, especially with Roma, Juventus and Inter owing the best part of €1 billion to their creditors put together, and Napoli losing inspirational coach Spalletti. Make some more clever choices and keep Leao, Tomori, Benacer and Hernandez, and it wouldn't be surprising to see another triumphant campaign for Milan in the very near future. So that's our take on the situation at AC Milan, but what do you think they need this transfer window? Let us know in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, drop us a like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and you'll never miss an upload. We'll see you next time.